This is Radio Prague International coming to you from the Czech capital.
Hello and welcome. I'm Anne-Marie Regner and you're listening to Czechia in 30 minutes, a half hour of news and interesting stories coming your way from the Czech capital. Coming up on today's program, we're 80 years old, Karlovy Vary, to celebrate landmark in style. What's killing the fish in Czech rivers? Czech researchers are looking for answers. Little Hanoi, Next Generation explores what it means to grow up Vietnamese in Czechia. The best of Czech animation. Iconic Czech bedtime story character Maxi Pesfík turned 50 this year. All that coming up after the news, brought to you by Ruth Franková.
News.
President Petr Pavel has received the government's document setting out the Czech delegation's position for next week's NATO summit in Ankara, the Czech news website Novinky reported on Thursday. According to Novinky, which cited the document, Czechia will reaffirm its support for Ukraine and commit to gradually increasing defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. The document also says NATO should maintain its long-term commitment to supporting Ukraine, including after the war ends. Strengthening air and counter-drone defense is another Czech priority for the summit. Pavel welcomed the government's commitment to continued support for Ukraine in a post on X. President Petr Pavel's attendance at next week's NATO summit will harm Czechia's interests abroad, Prime Minister Andrej Babiš said on Thursday in an interview with the Czech news website Deník.cz. Babiš argued that this year's summit will focus on economic and defense spending issues, which are the government's responsibility rather than the president's. The government had initially excluded Pavel from the Czech delegation, but the Constitutional Court of the Czech Republic ordered it to ensure the president could attend. Babiš will lead the delegation, while Pavel says protocol dictates that the head of state should head the country's delegation. Babiš also accused the president of using the dispute to campaign for re-election. Sales of electric cars in Czechia reached a new monthly record in June with 2,142 new battery-powered vehicles registered, according to figures released on Thursday by the Transport Research Centre. The previous record of 1,684 was set in April. Electric vehicles made up 8.1% of new passenger car registrations in June. Between January and May, however, their share was 6.3%, well below the EU average of 20%. There were about 72,200 fully electric passenger cars on Czech roads at the end of June. Škoda Auto remained the best-selling brand in the first half of the year, ahead of Tesla and Mercedes-Benz. And finally, a quick look at the weather. Friday will be sunny to partly cloudy with daytime temperatures between 20 and 24 degrees Celsius, rising to 27 degrees in South Moravia. Isolated showers may develop in the mountains. I am Ruth Franková, and that's the end of the news.
The Jubilee 60th edition of the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival gets underway in the West Bohemian spa town on Friday. 2026 also marks 80 years since the event's foundation, an anniversary that the organizers say places Karlovy Vary in the most exclusive club. Ian Willoughby has more.
23. ročník 1982. Výstava cen Karlovarského mezinárodního...
In a series of videos posted on social media, the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival has recently been looking back at the colourful history of the second oldest event of its kind in Europe. The first edition was held in 1946, making this the 80th anniversary of its founding. Karlovy Vary's executive director, Krzysztof Mucha, says he and the other organisers have done their utmost to make 2026 special, including securing a guest of the calibre of true Hollywood great Dustin Hoffman.
We were hoping that we will be able to bring one of these Hollywood icons, and when we realized that there is a chance that Dustin will be able to come, we felt, okay, this is exactly the year when we really need one of the icons, but also we wanted to have the young, still very active filmmakers, actors like Jesse Eisenberg and Maggie Gyllenhaal. So we are very lucky, and I'm happy for that we have this mix of incredible filmmakers in town.
Krzysztof Mucha has been working at Karlovy Vary for almost 3 decades, and last year took the helm following the death of Jiří Bartoška, the man who revived the festival in the 1990s and made it what it is today. Mucha says he and artistic director Karel Och have been cultivating contacts in Hollywood for a long time, and that pays off.
In terms of the guest, I can feel that being able to go regularly to the United States, Karel and I, we go 3 times a year there. We are trying to keep the relationship with the agents and publicists, and I think that this is one of the the fruits of this focus on being there regularly.
The reason this is only the 60th edition of a festival that began 8 decades ago is that in the communist period, Karlovy Vary alternated with the Moscow Film Festival, with which it was forced to share its A status. Artistic director Karel Och has done a lot of research in the archives ahead of the 2026 KVIF, and I asked him which landmark felt bigger, turning 80 or reaching 60 editions.
I received this beautiful gift from what I've been doing to read about so much amazing stuff that happened in Karlovy Vary ever since 1946. So I have to say it's the 80, because that brings us to the exclusive group of the second wave of the festivals after Venice, which is the oldest. I'm talking about Cannes and Locarno in 1946. The number of editions, 60, we could not really influence it because of the political reasons, but we're 8 years old.
Looking to the future, Krzysztof Mucha says the Karlovy Vary Film Festival aims to keep building on its storied tradition.
We want to have the festival as the place where you will have the same feeling as you had in the past. You will be able to meet, to see beautiful movies, to have a chance to talk to your friends and the filmmakers, and having a great time with the festival audience.
The Karlovy Vary International Film Festival runs until Saturday, July 11th.
Thank you, Ian Willoughby, for that report. Rising temperatures and declining oxygen levels are causing more frequent fish die-offs in Czech rivers, prompting new efforts to monitor and protect freshwater ecosystems. Scientists and water authorities are deploying advanced technologies to track water quality and better understand how climate change is reshaping aquatic life.
During hot summer days, one of the most common ways to cool down is by going for a swim. As the Czech Republic is a landlocked country, people rely not only on swimming pools, but also on natural bodies of water such as rivers and lakes to escape the heat. While it may not be obvious at first glance, these waters are also suffering the consequences of global warming. Among the organisms affected are fish. Scientists have been observing a growing number of fish die-offs for several years. The main factor behind this trend is the depletion of oxygen caused by the overgrowth of cyanobacteria, which thrive in warm water during hot weather. At the end of June last year, around 30 tons of fish died in the Morava River's Die tributary. This year, the state-owned company Povodí Moravy, which manages the Morava River basin, is trying to prevent a similar disaster. Monitoring probes have been installed along the river to measure water temperature and oxygen levels both at the surface and at greater depths. The data are transmitted directly to the river authority, which assesses whether interventions such as adjusting the river flow are necessary. In some sections, the water has also been artificially oxygenated. Thanks to these measures, fish deaths have so far been prevented this year. Watercourses are now also being monitored on the opposite side of the country, in the Ore Mountains, which lie along the border between the Czech Republic and Germany. The main part of a 3-year research project will focus on quantitative monitoring of fish populations in selected streams across the mountain range.
Ten projekt má několik fází. V té první
This project has several phases. In the first phase, we will install temperature sensors along approximately the first half of the stream to monitor water temperature over the long term. The second phase, which is the most important one, will involve visiting each site individually and conducting a detailed survey of both the aquatic environment and the relevant abiotic factors.
Says Petr Blabulil, the project leader from the Biology Center of the Czech Academy of Sciences and University of South Bohemia. The Ore Mountains have undergone major changes over recent decades due to industrial pollution, landscape restoration and ongoing climate change. The project therefore also aims to find out what condition the local fish communities are in today and which factors will shape their future development. During fieldwork, biologists will carefully catch, measure, weigh and identify fish before releasing them.
We would like to find some unique, locally adapted populations and assess their status and condition. Then we will focus on other populations and examine whether they are doing well or whether it is necessary to take additional measures to help them thrive better in the future.
The overall aim of the project is to improve the protection of the Ore Mountains' native freshwater ecosystems and to establish a shared scientific foundation for their long-term management on both the Czech and Saxon sides of the border.
Romana Grajcarová reporting. An exhibition now on display at Prague's Holešovice Market Hall explores what it means to grow up between two cultures. Little Hanoi, Next Generation, combines large-scale portraits with personal stories to introduce the children of Vietnamese immigrants who settled in former Czechoslovakia decades ago. Ruth Franková went along to find out more.
The exhibition follows up on the original Little Hanoi project from 2008, created by photographers Štěpánka Stein and Salim Issa, which documented the first generation of Vietnamese immigrants who arrived in what was then Czechoslovakia in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Nearly 20 years later, Stein has returned to the subject, this time together with photographer Wendy Mlejnská. Instead of their parents, however, the focus is now on the second generation, young people who grew up between two cultures but now call Czechia home. Stein says that after documenting the lives of the first generation nearly 20 years ago, it was only natural to return and tell the story of their children.
The reason why this new project actually happened is that those people had children, and the children now are around the age 18 to, let's say, 30, something like this. And we wanted to capture their portraits, their lives, their thoughts, because we call them second generation. And that sort of means that, you know, you still have the roots, but you also have the roots of the country, what you're living in, what you were born to. And the language that you speak is mainly Czech, and you still understand your parents, but you might not speak as well Vietnamese. So, you know, they're on the border like any other second generation.
The new exhibition features 76 large-scale portraits, each accompanied by a short personal story written by Tui Xuan Nguyen Chin. She says one of its aims was to challenge stereotypes about the Vietnamese community.
We wanted to show the big range of our generation. You know, our generation is not only people who work in večerka, in the small stores, but we also have some artists, lawyers or doctors, and there's so many professions here. If you look at 76 portraits here and read the short story about them, you can feel that there's a big diversity.
Tui says one of the biggest differences between her parents' generation and her own is their sense of belonging.
While our parents came here to work and they didn't know if they stay here or go back to Vietnam, most of second generation grew up here since their childhood or they were even born here, and now they feel like the Czech Republic is their home. And if they say I'm going home, they mean I'm going home to the Czech Republic.
Thuy herself is also one of the people featured in the exhibition. She came to Czechia with her parents when she was 7 years old and says her family's story reflects that of many first-generation Vietnamese immigrants.
My parents lived here in the 90s and they studied in Chemopetro Litvinov, and then they had to come back to Vietnam because they were not allowed to have a family at that time. Based on bilateral contracts, they were not allowed to have families, so they had to come back to Vietnam. But economical situation was really bad in Vietnam, so they took a chance to come back and came back with us, with the kids. And now I've been living here for 30 years. I still have a strong connection with Vietnam because my parents teach us about Vietnamese traditions. I can speak Vietnamese. But after that long time living here, I feel like Czech Republic is my second home.
The exhibition hall is filled with large portrait banners, some hanging from the ceiling and others mounted on the walls. Each shows its subject against a pastel-colored background, partly veiled by smoke and holding an object that has a special meaning in their life. Photographer Wendy Mlejnska explains how the visual concept came about.
We were thinking about pastel colors, something really bright. But if you have 80 persons to be portrayed, you need to raise it up a little bit, because if not, you will end up with 80 passport pictures on the wall. So at the beginning we were thinking about feeling of the celebrities at the concert. You see at the beginning, you see the smoke and no one's there, and in one moment you can see a little bit of them and more and more. And that's the feeling we wanted to capture on the pictures. And then Štěpánka said it's necessary to add something more in the pictures, the story behind it. And that's why they're holding the objects they are connected to.
For Štěpánka, staying working on the exhibition also felt very different from photographing the first generation almost 30 years ago. While she and Salim Issa spent a year documenting life in Prague's supper market for the original project, they never really managed to build close relationships with many of the people they photographed, she says.
Compared to this new project, I feel personally that I'm close to the people who we were portraying. I know their stories. We understand each other way more. And maybe that's, because we have things in common in Czech Republic. We all know what means this and what means that. And maybe this is the connection that now we have in common, the traditions and small things, like jokes, sense of humor. So that's, for me, that's the biggest difference.
Seeing so many of the people featured in the exhibition attend the opening made the project especially rewarding.
So many of those people who are on the portraits came to the opening, and they came to all of us and said, thanks for doing this. And it was really good feeling.
For Stein, the exhibition also reflects a broader change in Czech society's view of the Vietnamese community.
Whenever I went past 25 years to Paris, I went to London, I went to Berlin, I find so many multicultural experience, so many, other nationalities, so many other ethnicities. I kind of feel like it's really good for Czech Republic to have this community here because, 100 years, maybe 150 years, we were a really diverse country, incredible. We had, Jewish community, German community, Hungarian community, and that all was devastated during the communism. And past 15, 20 years, there's a really big respect from Czech society, to see the Vietnamese community in really different light.
And if there is one thing Thuy Xuan Nguyen Chin hopes visitors will take away from the exhibition, it is that the Vietnamese community is not something separate from Czech society, but an integral part of it.
I would like people who leave this exhibition with a feeling that actually Vietnamese community is a part of Czech society, because I still sometimes meet a person who tells me, go back where you come from. But a lot of people you see here were born in the Czech Republic, so where should they go if they were born here? I know that that person meant that I come back where my parents came from. I understand that, but I would love people to accept us as a part of Czech society, because I feel like part of Czech society already.
That was Ruth Franková reporting.
This is Radio Prague, Czechoslovakia.
On the occasion of our 90th anniversary, Radio Prague International has decided to celebrate this milestone with you. Our voice has been broadcast to the world for 9 decades. Now it is time for your voice to be heard on our program. Tell us your story. Why do you listen to Radio Prague International? Since when have you known Radio Prague International, and what does Radio Prague International mean to you today? And last but not least, choose one story from our archive and tell us why it resonated with you. And how to participate? You can either send us an email at english@radio.cz with a recording answering the questions above, send us your phone number so we can call you and record your answers, or send us your answers in written form and we will read them for you. Your responses can be anonymous, or they can include your name if you wish. In any case, they will become a central part of our special broadcast culminating in August, the month when Radio Prague International was established in 1936. For 90 years, our station has been broadcasting stories of people, places and events that we believe would be valuable to you. Now, in these uncertain times, more than ever, it is your story that would be of value to us. Share it with us, share it with the world. The floor is yours.
He is big, shaggy, kind-hearted, and loves his best friend Aya. Maxipes Fík is an animated fairy tale character who has been wishing children good night for 5 decades. Nevertheless, it is also a prime example of Czech animation forged by the collaboration of top Czech creators. Romana Grajcerová has the story.
Dobrý večer.
When hearing this sound from the TV, almost every child in Czechia knows it is time for Večerníček, Czech television's popular bedtime story series. It has been part of the bedtime routine of several generations of Czech children for over 60 years, while the opening and closing theme is the longest running theme ever broadcast in the country and has remained unchanged since 1965. Over the decades, Večerníček has become an institution which has consistently combined the talents of excellent Czech illustrators, writers, animators and directors. The animated fairy tales broadcast in Večerníček have won over not only generation of Czech children, but also many adults. One of the most popular fairy tales that first appeared in Večerníček on the 14th of May 1976 is called Maxipes Fík. The series tells the story of Fík, an oversized, talking, intelligent dog, and a little girl named Aya, who lived together in a small village in northwestern Bohemia.
Jmenuje se Rek. Fek, opakovala Aya, protože neuměla říct R. Rek, ne fek. To už můžeš rovnou říkat Fík. No, a tak začala Aya pejskovi říkat Fík.
That was an excerpt from the first episode of the Maxipes Fík series, entirely narrated by the Czech actor Josef Dvořák.
Já jsem dostal nabídku
I was offered the chance to narrate the bedtime story Maxi bez Fík, and it was my very first children's TV series. To my great surprise, it became a huge success right away. When I started working on it, I honestly had no idea what it would involve or whether anyone would even like it.
Maxi bez Fík eventually became an iconic animated character, not only in Czechia but also abroad. Alongside the unmistakable voice of Josef Dvořák, one of the first things that captures attention is the visual style of the series. Fík's appearance was created by the late illustrator Jiří Šalamoun, whose style oscillates somewhere between naive art and art brut. This approach is also reflected in the illustrations of Maxi bez Fík. Details fade into the background, giving space to bold lines that at times look as if they had been scribbled by a child's hand.
První skici, který se snažím zachovávat proto, abych...
I try to hang on to my initial sketches so that I have a kind of retrospective control. Sometimes those sketches are more interesting than what later goes out. Most of the time I'm sitting at a desk, and as I work I comment a little, even out loud. That helps me to remember what I'm doing and to take it in. It's basically a job like any other.
Je to práce prostě jako každá jiná.
This is how Šalamoun once modestly spoke about his work in an interview for Czech radio. The look of Maxi bez Fík was inspired by a real dog named Elster, an old English sheepdog also known as a bobtail. Šalamoun had once seen a bobtail in England and liked it so much that when his daughter wanted a puppy, he decided to get her exactly that breed. Fík is therefore big and fluffy, and his long white fur, as well as his kind gaze, radiate warmth and gentleness. Despite his size, he never seems frightening, quite the opposite. Fík is peaceful, kind-hearted, and loves his Aya more than anything. The creator of the story, the late writer Rudolf Čechura, was a passionate dog lover. As he revealed in an interview for Czech radio, he did not hesitate as a child to crawl into his dog's kennel to be with him.
No, já jsem měl psa hned, jak jsem se narodil.
I had a dog the moment I was born. Usually it is children who get a dog from their parents, but in our case it was the other way around. The dog had long been part of the family before I even came into the world. Our dog was called Jiskra. He was gentle and watched over me from an early age. Later, when I learned to walk a little, I used to crawl into his kennel. He had a big, spacious kennel, not quite as big as Maxi bez Fík's, but certainly large enough for me to fit inside.
Rudolf Čechura began writing the stories about the oversized bobtail dog and his friend Aya in 1975 in the village of Ahníkov, the very place where the story is set. But in the mid-1980s, the village was forced to make way for surface brown coal mining and was gradually abandoned and demolished. Today, only a few traces of it remain. Yet Ahníkov lives on elsewhere, in the world of Maxi bez Fík and in the memories of generations of Czech children who fell asleep each evening to the adventures of Fík and Aya in the Czech treasured bedtime series Večerní Čech.
Dobrou noc.
And that cheerful report brings us to the end of today's broadcast. I'm Anne-Marie Regner saying thank you for listening and goodbye.